and I've started feeding all my plant, like fertilizing all my plants. So I think it's having a growth spurt. That's why it keeps whacking me in the head. But anyway, welcome back everybody to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. This is a weekly podcast available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, where two exes who are now good friends talk about whatever is on their mind that week. I'm Josh, one of the hosts, and Sean's the other host. How are you, Sean?
Hi, I'm doing okay. I feel like I'm about to sneeze. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's allergies, seasonal allergies.
It is allergy season.
I feel like every season is allergy season in
Wow.
London. The pollution is quite bad, isn't it? Like the air quality is quite bad. But let's not start the episode by complaining.
No, let's not. I was just telling Sean, because in last week's episode, my spider plant had been sort of like whacking me on the head, and I feel like it's even worse this week. And I was just saying I've been fertilizing my plants. And while we're on the subject of fertilizer, did you get that that set from what are they called? I've got them over there. I'm trying to read them from here, but I haven't got my reading glasses on, so I can't remember what the name of the company is. Do you remember?
I can't remember the name of the company.
It's a name of a company. They produce vegan plant food, but it's like it's a whole series. So it's like a liquid fertilizer, but then there's also a cleaner, like a leaf cleaner, and then like a sort of leaf shine / leaf foliar feed.
Ask you about that? Is this all a bit of like overkill? Like, do these things actually do anything? I know fertilizer does something, but like elixirs and leaf spritzers and things like this, are they actually something, or are they just a product to get money from people?
I mean, they're not. The fertilizer is fairly essential, I would say. The leaf cleanser and the spritz, they're not essential, but I think they do something. Especially, I mean, we were just talking about, how dirty London is. Like, I do have to clean layers of dust off the leaves of my plants quite regularly, because especially I live near two very large roads, like one motorway and then another large main road, and I think that there is just so much dust in the air, particularly in London. The indoor plants, obviously, they don't get rained on, so I think there is an argument that they do something. I don't think they're essential, though. I think they're more like, if you really want your plants to grow their best. And I mean, look, obviously it works.
Are you using that brand? Is that what you use as a fertilizer?
I used that. There's a few I use, but yeah, that's one of them. I wish I could remember the name, though. I'm just going to like pop off camera really quickly.
But what, you can't see it from where you are?
No, I can't read the... Oh, yeah, I can see it now. So Vital. But SOW Vital.
So Vital.
Sow Vital.
Okay, sow.
Female pigs Vital.
What was what's it made out of? Seaweed?
It's probably got seaweed in it. I think they also use, I want to say, corn, some sort of byproduct of the corn industry, because corn's quite high in sugar, I think, and a lot of plant foods essentially are just forms of sugar, because that's what plants use.
And this fertilizer company, am I right in remembering that it is veganic, so it's vegan and organic, or is it just vegan?
I don't know about the organic thing. It's definitely vegan, and their products are certified by the Vegan Society. Whether they're organic as well, I'm not sure. I would imagine they probably are, but I.
But that's a thing, isn't it? I'm not making it up. Like veganic farming, or veganic.
Oh yeah. There's a big veganic movement, which is it's what's that? Is it a portmanteau? Is that what that term is, where you have two words joined together to form a new word? Portmanteau or port. I don't know if the T is silent because it's French, but like veganic, obviously being a combination of vegan and organic. Veganuary. Veganuary is a portmanteau.
Yeah, I love the way that people who aren't familiar with that term or that word try and pronounce it.
Veganuary.
Veganuary.
Vajazzle.
Thanks for coming, Veganuary.
Thanks for vajazzling me.
Sometimes you have stories in your life and phrases that you say. Like, for instance, we spoke about the spritzer. And whenever I hear that word, I think of that episode of The Simpsons.
Spritz.
Spritz, but the word spritzer.
Spritzer, okay.
Like, I think
Which episode?
So even if I hear the word spritz, I think of spritzer. The episode where Ned and Homer go to Las Vegas and they end up getting married to two waitresses in the cocktail servers.
Yeah.
And there's one part of it where they're out and they're like, I don't know, riding a roller coaster, and I think there's a lion and a giraffe on the roller coaster with them. It's just nonsense.
I vaguely remember this.
And there's a bit where, because Ned is, famously, that character is very religious and teetotal, and he's in the bar and he said, I think they win money or they're having such a good time that he says, oh, what the heck, I'll have a white wine spritzer.
Okay.
But it says white wine spritzer, 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 and then the next day they wake up and they're all hungover, and every time, I mean, I must have seen that episode, I don't know, probably for the first time 30 years ago. But every time in my life that I've heard the word spritz or spritzer, my brain does that bit of dialogue from the show. Have you got any things like that in your? I mean, there are so many Simpsons things for me, but have you got anything that you always just relate it to something else?
Pretty much every minute of every day it's something. Like I'm just looking across the room and I see a Waitrose bag and I think of that, that scene from Some Like It Hot. But yeah, no, like my brain is
wait, do you mean
Rose.
Wait for Sugar?
Wait for Sugar. But isn't her name Rose?
No, her name's Sugar.
Oh, her name's Sugar.
And so they're about to leave on the boat and she comes and screams out, wait for sugar.
Wait for Sugar, that's right, yeah.
So why does that remind you of the wait bit of Waitrose?
I don't know. Didn't you do a blog post once about something in Waitrose?
Yeah, and I called
maybe that's why.
I called it like a play on words, and I used to say it all the time, Waitrose for sugar.
Maybe that's it then.
Yeah, so, Waitrose for sugar instead of Wait for Sugar, because Some Like It Hot is one of my favorite films, and so I used to always say that. And I think I had a blog post once titled that. But
yeah, I mean, my brain brimmeth over with pop culture references, but half the time they're like poorly remembered or misremembered. So, but just going back to the Simpsons quickly, because another Simpsons episode that stands out in my mind is the one that Bette Midler's in, and where she's famous obviously for her litter picking efforts in New York City, and she's on the highway screaming at people. But the reason I bring it up is that today, I don't know if it was today or was the day, but I received from someone I know, they sent me this image, which was wishing Bette Midler a happy 79th birthday, I think.
Okay.
But the image was like it was one of those ones where it's like one main image and then three smaller images down the side, like a composite image. But the main image was of Bette Midler holding a birthday cake, but it was so obviously AI generated. I mean, she looked about 150 in it. And it was just clearly AI generated. Like, I've seen Bette Midler in the last few years. I know, she's aged, but she hasn't aged that much.
Yeah.
And then the three images down the side, like two of them were of her sort of, maybe in the height of her career in the 80s or whatever. But then the middle one was Mayim Bialik playing a young Cece Bloom in Peaches. So I just replied to my friend. I was like, who made this? I was like, two of those pictures aren't even Bette Midler. Like, it's just so stupid. It was such a dumb and perfect encapsulation of the complete proliferation of false information and the use of AI, and it's just
I saw one this morning, an AI generated image of Madonna. And it was something to do with the Guinness Book of World Records has recognized Madonna as, I don't know, the biggest selling female artist or something. And it had a photo of what purported to be a real photo of Madonna in a white suit holding a sign saying Guinness Book of Records record, and there were framed pictures of her behind on the wall. And, it looked like it was photorealism, style, but the suit and the body shape, if you were a Madonna fan or even a casual, like, have a casual awareness of her, you would know that wasn't her body. It was
Right.
not stocky, but it was a different shape than what she is. And I was just thinking, why would anybody do that? Like, why would somebody create a picture of Madonna, a fake picture of Madonna? And then they got me thinking, is the news that they recognized her for this award even real? Like,
Yeah.
where would I find that information out? So the way that we consume information in an instant means that how many thousands of people would have just looked at that and just accepted that as something that happened and then moved on. And then their brains have cataloged that as a fact about Madonna that they might mention to someone else down the line. And it's
well,
just this.
Well, just as I was talking about that Bette Midler thing, I was like, it might not even be her bloody birthday.
No.
Like, it just, someone could put that image out at any day of the year and be like, happy fucking, and she might not be 79 either. Like, who fucking knows? There's just, it's just, we've mentioned that, we've talked about it before, right? Like, just, we are so bombarded with information now that we have to make these, like, not even conscious decisions about filtering information about whether it's relevant to us, whether it's true, whether it's funny, whether it's good, bad, whatever.
So I'm reading that book that you lent me. Hang on,
Which
just
one?
now I'm the one off screen for a second.
Which one?
This Ruby Wax book.
Oh,
Frazzled.
did I lend that to you?
Did you, or did I just buy it?
I don't think I lent that to you. Didn't I just see that? Didn't I just see that at your flat the other week? And I was like, oh, have you read that?
Just a few days ago, you said, have you read that Ruby Wax book? And I said, no, not yet. But I
was saying that because I wanted to borrow it. That's why I was saying that.
Well,
I don't think I gave it to you.
I'll lend it to you.
Thank you.
You can have it. You can have it after.
Can you give me that book back that I lent to you, please?
Yes. I must have. I think maybe I bought it from a charity shop or something, but I don't know. Actually, I don't know where it came from, but it is interesting. But it's all about mindfulness and finding peace and calm and giving your brain a rest in a time in history where we are bombarded with information and things to do, things to remember, things to process. And, she goes through anecdotally some of the understandings she has about, why we're overloaded with information, what it is that we're overloaded with. And then it got me thinking, I actually find it, when I start to think about it and process it, I get quite overwhelmed by the amount of information that I'm presented with every day, or I'm expected to manage or curate, or it is so intense, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's hard to even remember it's hard to remember. Well, it's hard for me to remember most things, but it's hard to remember how it felt to live in a different time. But we lived in a very different time where, if I think back to my life as a teenager, for example, I would wake up in the morning and I wouldn't look at a screen some days until maybe that evening. I would get up, go to do whatever, have breakfast. I would go to school. We didn't have computers at school. We might have had a few in the computer lab or something, but we didn't use computers. We would use textbooks and chalkboards. We would then go home. Like, I would hang out with friends. You know what I mean? And then only then, maybe in the evening, I might turn the TV on. We didn't have a computer in the house, and then and it's hard to remember what that was like now, when like literally the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is look at your phone.
I mean, it really is an overload, isn't it? Like a
Oh, completely, completely.
sensory information overload. Yeah, I think back to when I was even a teenager, and
Mm,
I would listen to music,
hmm.
but I wouldn't have that sensory overload of, oh my God, which of these 1 trillion songs available to me will I listen to? I would just
No.
have a couple of records that I would go back to my favorite one and listen to it. And then I might watch something on TV. Once again, I
Hmm.
wasn't overloaded with hundreds of channels or
Hmm.
the internet. What will I
Hmm.
watch? It was, oh, okay, Bugs Bunny is on, or MASH is on, or
Yeah.
whatever it was that I used to like to watch, Monkey Magic. And then I would watch that. So I
Hmm.
might watch an hour or two of TV a day, maybe, sometimes
Mm.
none, like
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
no
Yeah. Yeah.
TV. And
Yeah.
then I would read.
Mm.
And then if I went for a walk, like when I lived in Redcliffe, I would go for a walk along the beach, even when I was a kid. And I might have 3, 4, 5 hours out in nature doing things like going down to the shops, sometimes shoplifting, sometimes go and jump off the pier and go swimming and
Mm.
steal oranges from people's backyards and run away from people. And none of that involved processing anything other than what was directly in front of me in the real world. That's all
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
to deal with.
Yeah.
So it was, to me now, it seems a very almost primitive or rudimentary way of existing.
Mm.
And now in the morning, we're recording this in the middle of the day. The amount of information that I've dealt with between waking up
Mm.
and, I went to the gym this morning and I listened to a podcast. So I listened to people talking at me for an
Yeah.
hour.
You don't just
Uh,
have silence when you
no,
walk or when you go to the gym or when you're on your way somewhere. We're just
yeah.
constantly getting that information.
And I went to the gym at like 6:30 in the morning, but I was awake at like 5 to 6. So from 5 to 6 to 20 past 6, I was scrolling on my phone.
Hmm.
I also, after that, when I was having my breakfast, I sat down and I read some of this Ruby Wax book. So I was
Hmm.
processing information there about
Hmm.
processing information.
Hmm.
I've done a lot of work as well. Like I'm on my lunch break now. We're recording this in my lunch break,
Hmm.
but I've done, 5 hours of work this morning,
Hmm.
emails, creating documents, there's going to be. I've got meetings this afternoon. I've had
Hmm.
music playing. I've had a podcast on in the background, another podcast while I've been
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
So the multitasking is
Yeah.
it.
And
I think,
our brains are maybe our brains have not evolved fast enough to keep up with the pace of innovation and technology and information that the world is giving to us. And last week well, no, 2 weeks ago actually, we were talking about people on public transport, like maybe playing music or being on phone calls or and stuff like that. And I think I was saying, I think a lot of it is antagonistic, but actually, I'm not so sure. I've sort of had a rethink about it, and I think that people have much less. I don't know what the correct term is, but I would call it maybe situational awareness. So
yeah,
you were talking about being young, and just there would be no distraction. You would be very aware of your environment. You'd be looking around. You would be, you know, uh, just very hyper aware of what was around you. But
yeah,
now I see so many people. I mean, I sometimes just stop when someone just is walking towards me, looking at their phone, like walking along the street, looking at their phone, not looking where they're going. I mean, not
yeah,
only is it like you know stupid. It's just dangerous. It's so
yeah.
dangerous. Like, I've seen people like nearly walk out in front of buses because they're just looking at their phones.
But
And,
yeah, I also.
people are just go on.
Oh, cool. I think it's to do with. Do you know like when we had our episode about Mounjaro and tirzepatide, and talking about how that drug in part of its process is that it works as a circuit breaker. So, for me, and I wrote a blog post about this, and it's gotten a lot of comments from people
Mm,
about who are in similar situations, or even some people have written to me to say they've got a loved one who lives with PTSD or like eating disorder, and they never had it explained the way that that my story explained it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of, like, for me, food was the way that I blocked out a lot of the white noise or the PTSD. Or I've had periods in my life where it was alcohol. I've had periods in my life where it was sexual encounters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everybody is so bombarded by information and noise and stimuli that we're all looking for different ways to block out the noise of having to our brains constantly working. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that might be what some people are doing on the bus. They're listening to things loudly
Mm-hmm.
because they just want a break from their brain having to think. And all of this content that people are usually consuming
Or
is
because we're so used to existing in that state that the prospect of just sitting in silence with nothing to look at, nothing to read, nothing, no screen to look at, no one to talk to, no music to listen to, no podcast to listen to, just nothing, just sitting there and doing nothing becomes terrifying or, seemingly impossible.
do
And
you,
that's.
when you're in your car or when you're on public transport,
Mhm.
do you have some sort of outside thing playing? Like, do you have a podcast playing? Or do you have every
Always,
time?
always.
Do you
Always. If
never?
I'm driving, obviously I can't read a book. If I'm on public transport, I'll often take a book with me, but I find it very hard often on crowded public transport to focus on the book because there's so much other noise happening, whether it's
People are winding you
conversations.
up too much.
Yeah, I'm too distracted by annoyance. And so yeah, I'll often then just stick my headphones in if it gets too loud. But yeah, when I'm driving, I always have something playing.
But I
Um,
sometimes like to, like, I get annoyed at Hill if we're on the bus together and we're going somewhere
mhm,
and I'm looking out the window and I'm like looking at the architecture, the trees, what's happening on the street. I'm
mm,
taking it all in, similar to how I would when I was a kid and I'd go walking along the coast and I would just
mm,
be in the environment and see what was going on. But from the minute we get on the bus to the minute we get off the bus, he doesn't look up from his phone.
right.
And I find it, I'm better than I used to be with getting annoyed by it because, nothing to do with me. But
You're better at getting annoyed, or you're better at not getting
yeah,
annoyed.
yeah, I'm betting I get it or not. No, I'm better at just letting him have his own experience and not take it personally. But,
Right.
like even sometimes when I don't know, when we went to Gran Canaria and we had to get the bus from the airport to Las Palmas, you go along this rugged coastline and it's a 20-minute bus ride. To me, it was so fascinating. And, the ocean was there. And, if you look further enough that way, but it's too far away, but there's Africa. And look at all these like cactus on the hill and these rocks. And like I can see different names of shops and everything. I was so
Mm,
like I was like, like a little kid looking and taking all of this in. He played Pokemon or whatever he was doing on his phone and didn't look out the window of the bus. And it really
yeah.
annoyed me. And it shouldn't annoy me because it's his experience and the way that he's navigating the world.
No, but
But
it's symptomatic of something which is like on a societal level. It's like the sort of the silent pandemic or whatever, if you want, like of just people being much less interested in their environment and existing through virtual means
yeah,
and seeking connection, entertainment, validation. I don't know, anything through virtual means rather than through the real world and through awareness of their environment.
what
Um,
what are some things that are your sort of instant gratification distractions like that you do? I mean, is it
so
Instagram, TikTok?
yeah, not TikTok as we've established.
Toxic.
It's not my favorite social medium, but Instagram, yes, and I think the Instagram gods have really narrowed in on my algorithmic feed recently. Like they're just feeding me so much stuff that I do find myself suddenly going, "Oh my god, I've just been sat here for like 20 minutes." and I only came on my phone to send a text message to someone, and now I've actually just been sat here for 20 minutes. But the other things are online Sudoku. Like I could do that for a long time. I mean, I've always been very drawn to things like that. Do you remember when we lived in Stratford, we had like a desktop computer, and
Yeah.
I would sit for hours and play Free Cell on that. I've always been very drawn to those. I suppose it's like it's knowing what I know now, like having had an adult a diagnosis of ADHD. I think a lot of it is to do with dopamine, what they call dopamine mining.
Yeah.
And that's very common in people with ADHD. We have very unregulated levels of dopamine and serotonin in our brains, and so we often seek out things which will do that for us, and things like games. Eating is another one. So like when I read your article about Mounjaro and the food noise, I know that a lot of common dopamine mining activity with people who have ADHD is to eat even when they're not hungry, just because eating does release dopamine, and particular foods release dopamine.
And is drinking another?
Yeah,
Like
drinking's
drinking
another one.
alcohol.
Well,
So
any drug is anything, because most drugs do release dopamine. So any drug will, I think people with ADHD are much more prone to addiction. And I mean, I don't think this is a sort of peer-reviewed scientific theory which is proven, but it's one that I think is quite commonly held among clinical, clinicians, I suppose.
clinical clinicians.
Clinicians have an inclination towards this theory about addiction, about addictive behaviors, no matter what the behavior is, about addiction to things that do release dopamine, and they're much more common in people with ADHD, I think. So
Yeah, well, I feel like I have, the older I get, maybe the more pronounced these sorts of addictions to instant gratification have become.
mm-hmm.
So, but way back until when I was a child, I, would drink alcohol, and I would drink too much alcohol, and I would drink to distract myself from reality. And then you do those sorts of things, and then they become a habit, don't they? Like you're not just going through the process of dopamine mining or trying to disassociate. You then also it becomes habitual, and then it might also become a physical addiction. So it's not only a
So then you're
psychological
doubly,
addiction.
it's
And
behavioral and everything.
and
But then
I
the
think,
other.
sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I think I have that with sugar. Like,
Right.
so obviously, like I'm on this medication to help me control my compulsive eating, but I still have a sugar addiction. I still have all of that complicated relationship or complicated way of approaching something like sugar, where it's habitual, it's a physical addiction, it's part of dopamine mining, it's just because I like it. It's what I've socialized myself into
Well, yeah, I think we're
liking
sort of
certain things.
biologically designed, or designed isn't not the right word, depending on your creation um, ideas. But we are evolved. Let's say we are physically evolved to respond to sucrose. I mean that was originally, I suppose, from fruits, but now in modern life, sugar is highly addictive. We respond that, I think probably that is a dopamine release as well. Like it floods our brains with dopamine. So yeah, it that would make sense.
What's that episode of The Simpsons where Homer's got that bag of sugar or that mound of sugar that he's trying to protect, and he starts hallucinating? Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember that, where he's got all the sugar,
Vaguely,
and then the bees
vaguely.
come and steal the sugar,
Yeah, I
and
vaguely remember
he's
that.
hallucinating. He's like falling asleep next to the sugar, keeping watch, and he's talking in like a South American, in nondescript South American accent. And he's like, first they take the sugar, then we get the women, then we get the You know, these
No,
I
I
talked
don't
like,
remember that. I don't remember that level of detail.
but
Speaking of excess drinking, though, I have a story to tell from my
okay,
Friday night. If you want, I think it's appropriate for the podcast. Maybe not. We'll find out. But on Friday night, so I changed jobs recently. I left my old job about a month and a half ago, and because somebody else was leaving around the same time, we decided to delay my leaving drinks and just combine them. So on Friday night, I went back to my old job to have my leaving drinks, and I got stuck into the red wine very quickly. I stopped off in Richmond on the way and bought a couple of bottles of vegan red, and I got stuck into that pretty quickly. And then at some point in the night, I'm not quite sure when, somebody else who I used to work with produced a lump of hash. And I thought, oh, it would be really funny to see if I still remember how to roll a joint. And so I did that. And then I was with like a much younger person. And I think there was a part of me that was like trying to, in some sad middle-aged crisis way, trying to sort of reclaim my youth, or to maybe like see if I could still keep up with the young people, with the young folk. And so then I then proceeded to like smoke some of this joint, and my God, did I feel rough the next day. I mean, I had to get up and go to work. I had to go and do like a 6-hour shift at my new job, and I felt absolutely like it's taken me days to recover. Days to
do
recover.
you do you think your drinking or your substance consumption is a form of dopamine mining, dopamine chasing, disassociating, or are you doing it because you enjoy it in that moment?
No, it's 100% dopamine mining, 100%, and that's been the same with all of the substances that I've abused in my life. I do it to excess. So whether that's food, whether that's drugs, whether that's alcohol,
Yep.
I do it to excess. I don't. I'm not content just to get that initial hit, and just think, oh, that's nice, great.
Yep.
I am then constantly chasing that hit, and so yeah, whether
I mean, would you ever consider stopping to drink? Like, do you feel that it's a problem for you that you need to address?
not at the moment, because I don't. Well, I mean, I know I just said I smoked weed or not weed, but hash on Friday night. That was a one-off. I mean, that's not something I'm planning on repeating. But apart from that, alcohol is the only substance the only non-prescription substance that
Is it your only vice, Sue?
it's my only vice. It's my only vice. And so at this point in my life, and I don't, if I was drinking every week, um, that might be a concern, but it's not. It might be like once a month.
But when
And
you have a drink, are you capable of having one drink and
no,
then that being the end of it? Okay,
absolutely not.
that's to me what was the understanding that I came to about 3 years ago, where why I decided to stop. And thankfully, I was in a position emotionally, physically, whatever way you look at it, that I was
Yeah.
able to stop. Unlike food, which I needed a medical intervention, but
Hmm.
for alcohol, I never just had a drink for really the taste of it. I liked different ones. I preferred different beers over some others, and I had my favorites. But I would never, if somebody said to me, "Oh, here, have this third of a pint just to see what it's like," I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that.
No.
I would, in my life, I would rather have nothing to drink than
Yeah.
just one drink. Like
Yeah.
to me,
I'm the
it's
same. Yeah.
absolutely pointless. And so I would have, if I had one pint, I'm not joking when I'd say I would have 12 pints. Like
Yeah.
there was no direction other than to drink until I went to sleep or
Yeah.
couldn't remember or couldn't afford it anymore or whatever. And if I couldn't afford it, I'd probably find some way to get it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so even
100%.
though I could go 3 months without a drink sometimes because,
Mm-hmm.
the situation didn't come up. I hadn't gone to a bar or there was no parties or whatever. If I had a drink, it had to be every drink that was available in the radius. So
Yeah.
I was very careful with, I'm trying to be sensitive when people think of alcohol dependency and they use the
Mm-hmm.
word alcoholic. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really like to use that for myself because like there would be periods, long periods of time where I wouldn't drink at all. But
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it was a form of alcoholism if I felt like I couldn't stop once I started.
Mm-hmm.
That is a form of alcoholism, right?
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. I think there is a clear distinction
Yeah.
between alcoholism in the sense of, like in the traditional understanding of it, like the sort of the Alcoholics Anonymous, where it's a physical addiction to alcohol, and one where it's more driven by a need to drown out that noise, or to just simply put, just to be chasing dopamine. Where, yeah, I could never see the point of just having one glass of wine with a meal and being like, oh, that
No,
was nice, okay, now let's watch
no.
something on TV. If the wine was open, the whole bottle would be drunk, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
probably more. And it was the same with, I mean, I've abused other drugs in my life. I mean, for the for a long time in my teenage years, I would.
Careful, don't dox yourself with someone reporting you for certain behaviors.
Well, I mean, apart from my Friday night antics last week, I mean, I haven't really partaken in anything in a while. But I'm talking about my teenage years. I would smoke so much marijuana,
Yeah,
and it was that same thing of not being able to just have a bit and call it a night, or call it a day, just to go so far down that path. And it's been the same with I won't maybe talk about it in more recent years, like with other drugs and stuff, but
yeah.
yeah,
But
it's always
you
been the
you and
same.
I used to do things like if you and I planned to drink when we were somewhere, there would have to be a plan made that there was a substantial amount of alcohol.
Hmm.
Because yeah, you wouldn't go, oh well, I'll just buy 2 cans of beer and then we'll have that and then that's it. So I can remember there was a time we even went camping. I think it was outside of Vegas somewhere. We went camping in a tent and we bought with us just to go camping for one
For
night.
one night, yeah, I
One
remember
night in a
this.
tent in the desert. We took a jumbo plastic bottle of Jim Beam, was it?
I
Or
think it was Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels? Like massive, and like maybe like two big 2 liter bottles of cola.
Hmm.
And we drank the entire thing
Hmm.
in one night of camping. I mean, it was enough alcohol for a party of people.
I know.
And and but that was the way that my brain would had this relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
That if I was to
But
start
it
to
was the
have
same
one
with,
drink,
when you look back, and you talked about that blog post you wrote, or that article you wrote recently about food. It
which
was
which
food
we
is the
will
exact
which
same
we'll link
thing.
to. We should link to that. We've mentioned it so many times.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll put a
We should
link in the
link to
show
it.
notes. Um, but yeah, and you look back at our relationship with food as well. Like, it was exactly the same. Like, we would over plan. Like, if I've spoken about it with friends. Like, when we would come over and we would say, okay, let's order some food in, or let's cook, it would be like, I don't know if comical. I mean, comical in hindsight, the amount
Well,
of food we would order. I
yeah.
remember once when I went up to visit my friend Anna in Leeds, or our friend Anna in Leeds, but this is when I went solo. And I ordered from the vegan, the vegan Chinese takeaway, Wowin. I ordered from I think it was through one of the apps like Deliveroo or something. And I ordered, and I'm not joking, it was like two carrier bags full of food. And I
Yeah.
mean, Anna and I still like laugh about it today, because it was so comical. And obviously we tried eating as much as we could, but we couldn't finish it, and it lasted for literally for days. And I always have had that compulsion, and it is compulsion, to
Yeah.
just go 1,000% in on something,
Yeah.
whether that is food, sex, drugs, alcohol, just never
Yeah.
never really healthy things.
Yeah. In that blog post, I described like this, what food compulsion is, because I think for a lot of people who don't experience it or any sort of compulsion or addiction, they don't really understand what it would feel like to be powered by compulsion. Like
Hmm.
to feel like if I would go out of my way to go and buy a bag of snacks or groceries and
Hmm.
then bring them home and eat them all and not, it's like I hadn't even thought about it. I didn't think about it while it was happening. It's not like it's so hard to describe and to
And
describe to
it's
people
but
like
it's also, to the point where you would have, I can think of so many examples, like food related examples, where you would consume something to
yeah.
the point of it making you so physically ill, but not being able to stop it, and also not doing it again in the future. There'd be like those little jelly bean things that we used to eat in Australia,
Oh my
and we would
God.
eat them and make ourselves so ill, and then we'd buy them again like a couple of weeks later
Yeah.
and do the same thing, like
Yeah.
not learning. And I can think of times with drugs where I've taken um, so many or so much of one drug where I've,
Yeah.
had moments of, panic attacks, or, thinking I was going to die, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell my mum not to listen to this episode. And it wouldn't stop me from doing it again the next week,
Well, you know what? The,
it wouldn't always even stop me from doing more that night. I might get to the point where I was like, fuck, I've done too much. And
yeah.
then thinking I'm about to die. And then like, half an hour later, I'm like, well, I'll just have some more. It's just so
Oh,
fun. It's funny now. I can kind of laugh about it, but I'm not.
have you ever seen, read, or come across the script of is it Cat on a Hot Tin Roof? Is
The
that
play, Tennessee
yeah.
Williams. I've
Is
not
that
read it. I've seen
is
the
that the one I'm
production of it.
thinking of? And is that the one where the character is an alcoholic? The
Yeah.
guy, he's like a
Well, I
repressed
think
homosexual.
I think there are repressed alcoholic homosexuals in all of Tennessee Williams' plays, aren't there?
Well, I suppose, yeah. But so it really resonated with me when I saw it, not only because Brendan Fraser was playing the role on stage when I saw it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
and wasn't it from the guy from 90210 as
no,
well?
that
Wasn't
was a
he in it?
different play that I
Oh, that
saw.
was a different play.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was called Sideman or something. But
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
the character talks about drinking until he feels a click in his brain.
Hmm.
And that is, I suppose, dopamine chasing. That is disassociating from reality, getting so drunk that you're able to block out your PTSD or your white noise or whatever it is that
Hmm.
you've got going
Hmm.
on. And when I saw that play, I recognized myself in it. I was like, well,
Hmm.
that's why I drink. That's
Hmm.
why, well, that's how I drink.
Hmm.
That's how I drink. That's how I drink. I drink until I feel some sort of change or shift in me that
Yeah,
tells me I don't need to drink anymore.
you dissociate until you've dissociated enough from your
Yeah.
reality or from your trauma or whatever.
Uh, And if you might not have listened to it very much or often or recently, but the Alanis Morissette song called "The Reasons I Drink,"
Hmm.
and it is so well written to explain the reasons why people drink or eat to deal with uh, reality or how we use it to disassociate.
Hmm.
And it's exactly how I feel. And so 3 years ago, I went out and I had a particularly bad experience with drinking, where I started drinking in the middle of the day and I didn't end up coming home until like 3 a.m. And I was absolutely, really unwell and emotionally, physically, it was just horrible. And in the weeks following that, because you know what it's like you said, you're still recovering from your night out the other night, right? So
Yeah.
when you have a big night where you feel absolutely wasted, it takes you physically at least a few days to recover, but it almost takes you like longer to recover emotionally
Yeah.
sometimes from
Yeah.
the situation you find yourself in, you feel
Yeah.
compromised.
Yeah.
You feel like you've put yourself in a situation you shouldn't. You feel shame. You feel like all of these
And
feelings.
there's a part of that, I think, is also that your body only has limited supplies of dopamine,
Mhm.
and serotonin, and activities like excess drugs, alcohol, food, they can use up your reserves, and then you are in this kind of like this post high come down
Yeah, it's like
period.
a real
Yeah,
downer, isn't it?
and you feel,
And
I mean, I don't, it's not a term I really want to use, but it's a slightly problematic one to use, but it's the best way of explaining it is just you feel this sort of brain damage. You feel like you are compromised mentally, emotionally, physically, for days afterwards. Um,
well, after that session where I had that experience, I
mm,
don't know if I drank once or twice or not no times. I can't remember. It's quite blurry to me. But I can
mm,
remember in the weeks following it, as I came out of that haze and outside of that depression,
mm,
I started to have internal conversations with myself where I said, "Do you feel compelled to drink?" And I was like, "Well, no, I don't.
mm, mm,
But when you do drink, you can't stop."
yeah.
So I knew that I wasn't in what most people would consider an alcoholic state,
Mm,
but I had a problem where I couldn't stop when I did start. So I
mm,
just made the decision and I had to talk with myself. And it was kind of scary to make this
mm,
decision that, um, well, just don't drink anymore because
yeah.
every bad thing, every good thing, every experience you could have had with alcohol, you've had it.
Yeah.
You're coming up to being 50 at the time. I was 48 or whatever I was at the time. You've
Mm,
done it all. You're not going to miss out. You know what you've had and what could have been and what the different situations you can have with alcohol.
mm,
But it's not something that's going to bring you anything good now if you keep doing it.
yeah. And I
Like
think,
what
and that's, yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say the negatives in my mind suddenly became very apparent that the negatives far outweighed the positives of why I would
Yeah.
drink.
And I was just going to say, like we were saying before, and that really is where you can highlight the distinction between, alcoholism or addiction to another substance and this situation that we're talking about, where, an alcoholic in the traditional sense would not be able to just be like, okay, hang on a second, have a reasoned conversation with yourself or with someone else and be like, oh, okay, so I should just not drink,
Yeah,
and that's why I think you're right. It is important to draw that distinction, because it makes it sound like, anyone could do that.
yeah.
And it sort of, it victim blames, or not victim blames, but it's, it makes it, and it's the same with food. It's like when people sort of say, oh, well, why don't you just go on a diet? Why don't you just have a smoothie for your lunch? Or, and it's just like, it's a complete paradigm shift to think of things in that way. It's
But
outside of the.
isn't it strange that how I've talked about, and I don't want to trivialize it. Like I didn't just give up alcohol. It took me a long time. Like
Mm,
most of my life. I'm only 51 now, and I did it when I was 48.
mm,
To come to a realization that I don't want to drink anymore, and I probably shouldn't drink. So I
mm,
stopped. But for some people, they can't do that. Like there is
right.
a physical addiction that powers that more so than just what I was doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, seems to be the thing that I need a medical intervention with. Like I
Yeah.
can't just say, "Oh, okay, I won't eat junk food anymore." And but there are other people that can take or leave it. They're like, "Oh yeah, food
Yeah,
isn't
but
that big a problem to me."
that's because you have to eat. You don't have to drink alcohol to survive, but you do have to eat food to survive in life,
But
and so that's.
why is food like why is that the thing that might like it's curious to me that some people get
Yeah,
addicted to some things and some people don't. Like some people
yeah,
might take cocaine once a year, and then
yeah.
other people take it once and then they become a full blown addict.
Yeah, and then some people become addicted in the traditional sense, like we were talking about with alcoholism. But then other people become addicted in the sense that it's just a dopamine release, and are able to do just as you said with alcohol, are able to one day just say, okay, actually, do you know what? I'm not going to do it anymore,
Yeah.
and stop and not do it anymore. Whereas for other people, it's impossible. And so, yeah, it is really interesting how, what are the reasons? Are they genetic? Are they behavioral? Are they in our DNA? What are the reasons that some of us become, um, or some of us are more prone to abuse of certain substances, whether that's, food, alcohol, drugs,
Yeah.
than or exercise. I mean, I know some people who are addicted to exercise,
Yeah.
and that's less frowned upon, of course. But it's probably coming from a very similar place in our brains, where it's a complete. It's chasing dopamine.
Or trying to
Um,
disassociate through
yeah, yeah,
activity and staying busy. Do you
yeah.
think that I am um I don't know how to say this. Like, am I addicted to food, or am I addicted to the dopamine release? Or is
I
it a
don't know.
combination of both?
I I don't feel qualified to answer that. I don't
How
understand
about a wild sort of
speculation,
speculation?
a wild sweeping podcast speculation.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think you're addicted to the dopamine release.
Yeah.
I think you have to eat, as all humans do. You have to eat, in order to stay alive. But for whatever reason, traumatic events or conditions have led you down a path where food became that for you. I mean, it was alcohol for a long time, but then you've been able to stop that. And so then,
And do you
the
think
food.
because these food and alcohol and sex and whatever I was relying on as a either a distraction or a crutch or a break from reality, do you think because I stopped drinking that I maybe relied even more so on the food? And that's why,
Possibly.
in the last 3 years, the food, it's always been up and down and quite
Yeah.
serious for me, quite bad. But it felt like it supersized,
Yeah.
since I stopped drinking. And so it was like my body was like, well, hey, you used to every once a week or twice a week, you used to get hammered, and that gave
You
us a
get
break.
flood your brain with dopamine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you used to make us happy for this amount of time. So you better step up your food game if you're not doing this
Mm.
anymore. So, but
Yeah.
how do we get balance then? Like, obviously, this drug is giving me a sense of balance. It's a medical intervention to help me
Mm-hmm.
neutralize or calm down, and it'll be less extreme with my eating. But
Mm-hmm.
if I took the drug away, would that chemical imbalance or psychological imbalance, or whatever it is that's powering it, my dopamine chasing,
Mm-hmm.
that would probably still be there. So, how do we create or enact change that helps us to remain? I mean, this book by Ruby Wax, I haven't gotten to it yet because I'm only a fraction of the way in. She gives practical advice on how to do that, how to rely less on dopamine mining and to be more even. But
Mm-hmm.
do you have
Mm-hmm.
any insights into that?
Well, I mean, I can only talk from my experience. I'm not qualified to really talk about anyone else's, but I think it's a multi-pronged approach, isn't it? You can't. For some people, it will require some sort of chemical intervention, some sort of prescription drug intervention. But that may not be the only thing. You may also need therapy to process trauma. And I think for me, talking about my experience, I've done that. I had over a year of EMDR therapy to help with complex PTSD, and that
Yep.
was a big, big part of me in getting well physically, emotionally, and mentally.
Yeah.
But it was done in combination with other things, including, like an antidepressant medication, ADHD diagnosis and medication.
A,
So
a,
yeah, like
a joint.
God, no, I'm not repeating that. I mean, just to sort of trivialize it for a second, but like, not only like obviously just feeling rough from getting stoned, but also just from inhaling, because obviously it was mixed with tobacco.
Oh yeah.
I think I might have smoked a cigarette as well. I can't actually remember, surprisingly, but just waking up in the next morning and feeling like your whole throat, your whole sort of windpipe was just scorched. And oh my
Yeah.
God, I mean, what the hell was I thinking? Trying to keep up with the cool kids.
Well, do you think that my body is using Mounjaro or tirzepatide as a replacement for alcohol and food? Like, am I addicted physically to Mounjaro?
I, I don't know. I don't think it works in that way, because I was going to say before that I've also seen anecdotally that Mounjaro has been used to treat alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just necessarily suppressing compulsive eating, but compulsive drinking as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I don't know that it regulates your dopamine. Um, so I don't know if you'd be addicted to it in the same way. But yeah, but I mean, it seems to work, right?
Well,
Because
yeah, it is.
I
It's
mean, that's what you
working.
talk about in the article. Like, it wasn't just a physical, oh, I'm not hungry, I'm not as hungry as I used to be. It was a
Yeah.
complete sort of shift in your mental state of being.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I can't explain it to people. Like, if I posted the link to this blog post that I wrote on Reddit in a Reddit
mm,
group about people who use Manjaro.
mm-hmm,
And I don't know if you've had a look, but you have a look at some of the responses.
mm,
People telling the same story over and over and over again about how this drug has intercepted their compulsions, and
right.
not
Whether it's
just
food or
yeah,
otherwise.
yeah, not just oh well, it didn't make me hungry, because I think we all understand that even if you don't have compulsive eating disorder, we understand how a medicine might make you feel
Yeah,
full, right,
yeah,
after a small meal. We get
yeah,
that, but what people are trying to say is like the peace of mind that it's given them. And that
yeah.
was the biggest thing that I wanted to get across was, all my life I've lived in this like white noise tunnel of just roaring noise that
Mm,
has always been with me. And so I would look for ways to block out or disassociate from that and
mm-hmm,
deal with it. And when I took that drug, it felt like that noise for the first time in my life stopped. And
yeah.
that was before I'd had a time to eat a meal and feel full or anything. So it's not just that. There must be something
Mm,
else that it does. But I
mm.
just don't understand how that works.
Well, it's. I mean, how does the drug work? It's an inhibitor, isn't it?
Yeah.
It it stops when you're I mean, we're not doctors, obviously, but I believe, yeah, when you're hungry or when your stomach is empty, it
Yeah.
sends messages to your brain. And this drug, I think, this is the way it works. I believe that this drug blocks those receptors, so that you're not receiving that message that I'm hungry.
But
But
not only that, it also inhibits like we have compulsion levers or receptor generators in our brain.
mm,
So it's not only in the messaging between the gut and the brain, but it's also just working on these levers in your brain that control other sorts of compulsive behavior.
and
And
obviously, just to state the obvious, you're talking figuratively. You don't actually think there's a
uh,
little like lever in your brain.
somebody
Um,
somebody said that wrote this comment under my blog post actually that I used like, is it an analogy? Is that the right term? Where I said, imagine you're inside the biggest surf wave, like a barrel wave, and imagine the sound that that's making, like it's deafening, but you actually
mm,
can't hear it. but you can hear it at the same time.
Yeah.
And somebody wrote under my thing saying, I don't understand the example you're giving. Is there an actual sound you can hear? And
Right.
it's really
Okay. So
hard to explain to people.
I don't know if those ding. Did you hear the dings then on my computer?
No.
Oh, okay, good. Someone's literally. I'm not like making it up. Someone's actually just like text messaging me, asking me about weight loss drugs.
Who's asking you about that?
Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you their name on the
No, but I
podcast.
mean, is it just what, some brand, like, is it a spam email, or you mean somebody
No,
you
it's someone I
know?
know. Someone I know. Yeah. I love how we've become the go-to resource for weight loss jabs. But what was I going to say? So yeah, the thing with the brain, obviously, we don't think they're a little like cogs turning and levers to pull, but maybe this is the next phase of understanding about this drug. Maybe the manufacturers of tirzepatide were thinking of it purely in the sense that it inhibits the brain receiving those messages of hunger. But maybe there is a secondary action to the drug which does stop compulsive behavior. So maybe, it's really interesting. I think we don't fully understand all of the effects that the drug has. And maybe,
What?
I was just going to say maybe we don't understand long term effects either. Like maybe maybe we'll all be like completely like I don't know, like we'll have like no dopamine. Well,
Well, like a lot of middle-aged men, and I don't know if it's like a physiological thing or if it's like a sociological thing, but a lot of middle-aged men sort of go dopamine chasing, and I think sometimes it's just sounds like an excuse for shitty behavior. But
mm,
a lot of middle-aged men and sometimes younger men become addicted to porn,
mm-hmm,
and it works in a similar way to like scrolling Instagram or eating food or drinking alcohol, or it's that this dopamine mining, and the more you do it, it seems to have a less payoff, so you have to do it more again.
mm-hmm.
You sort of wear down your what do you call it? Like, I don't know, when you overdo something,
Yeah, you overstimulate or you flood your receptors or whatever.
yeah, and so you have to then
You're overexposed to something.
you're desensitized. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Or
So
maybe, what we were talking about was it about a month ago on the podcast? We were talking about how, porn websites or porn algorithms will gradually try and feed people more extreme content, which
yeah,
often seems to be veering towards young people and then eventually into child pornography. And obviously, this is in no way to um, excuse people who access that. But yeah, like it's this kind of need to always push the boundary a little bit more because you become used to something and then you need something more extreme every time in order to get the same amount of dopamine release as you become accustomed to or that you crave.
yeah. I mean, people use the term like gateway, like
Mm,
experience or gateway drug,
yeah.
to that your body becomes desensitized to the joy that it used to get, or the experience,
Mm,
or the dopamine hit, or whatever it was that you used to get
yeah.
from it, because you've done it too much, and then you become complacent about it. But then your brain is sending out the signal saying, hey, remember how you used to make me feel? Find something
Yeah.
else that makes me feel that way.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, I don't know.
Speaking so as I say, speaking of gateway drugs, have you seen Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, has proposed that the Metropolitan Police stop criminalising or decriminalise. I don't know if it's decriminalise in the traditional legal sense, but stop pursuing possession of cannabis as a reason to arrest and charge people. And I know that there are some countries in the world where almost all drugs have been decriminalised in a way, I suppose, to legitimize them to stop all the illegal activity that surrounds the
Yeah.
buying and supply and of these, the manufacturing and the supply of these illegal drugs. Um, but I don't know. Maybe we don't. I was just looking at the time. Maybe we don't have time to have a proper reasoned discussion about it. But I was just
Yeah.
curious to know what your thoughts were about that.
Well, obviously, drug laws are laws, LAWS. My Australian accent makes it sound like I was saying drug lords. But
Oh, right,
the
yeah,
the laws around drugs are often used as a device to target black and brown people, right? Like in
yeah,
especially in urban settings. So they're
hmm
used as a device to, stop and search people under the guise of, oh well, we've got to keep drugs off our street. And
yeah,
so this is why you get so many disproportionate amount of young black men arrested, and and there are
yeah,
all these
yeah.
statistics. It's
Well,
because
I mean, the statistics of like, I mean, the proportion of like black men in British prisons is so vastly disproportionate to the amount of
yeah.
like, the percentage of the population that is black. It's
Yeah,
just
I think
so
so. I think
racialized
decriminalization of marijuana, personal, what do you call it?
for
Uh,
personal use,
for personal use or for
personal
whatever, like,
consumption.
or holding it or having it, whatever you call it, being in possession of it. I
Mm,
think that should be decriminalized because it only exists to target people when they don't have anything else to target them for.
hmm
It's used as a device to stop, search,
But do you
arrest, and
think?
detain people.
But do you think then the argument could be extended to all other drugs? I mean, I mean, alcohol's a drug which causes massive societal and individual health problems. Um, Yet it's legal, it's available everywhere. The government makes money from the taxes on it. Tobacco is probably less prevalent than it used to be, but it's still legal, widely available. It literally kills people. Um, why would we not then? I mean, do you think there's an argument then for just decriminalizing all drugs and
I think so.
regulating them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it's probably a much longer conversation than we have time for now, but I
yeah.
definitely think that only good can come from it.
hmm
But the problem, what I would worry about, is then capitalism coming in to fill that void. Like, like if marijuana was legalized, that then all you would have then is high street shops coming in, or Tesco or Waitrose or somebody opening up their own marijuana dispensaries, and it would become another arm of capitalism, and that's
Yeah.
evil.
Well,
But from a point of view of um, you know targeting people in the community, usually people who are poor or are people of color, yeah, 100% it should be decriminalized and not be allowed to be used as a weapon against people.
yeah. I mean, the thing I was just going to quickly mention was that, how tobacco has been what's the word, like it's much less socially acceptable now than it was 20 years ago to smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's just not yeah, and a lot of that has been policy driven, that there's been this cultural shift, but now of course you've got a lot of people vaping, and I just found out, I don't know, I mean, I don't vape, I don't think I've ever even tried a vape. um I have
Wait,
not really
wait for
been
the next going away party, Sue.
for my next leaving drinks, but I wasn't aware that there are disposable vapes that I think they're about to become illegal in
Yeah.
this country, in the UK. But it, it's obviously, I think vaping is better for you than maybe traditional cigarettes were. I think there are less health
Well,
risks
who
for
knows?
the
Who knows?
individual. But if you look at it on a wider level, on a global level, like suddenly we've now shifted towards this thing where you have these disposable plastic and metal things that get used once. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, they're becoming outlawed, so it will change. But
Yeah.
I mean, we've just shifting one problem to another, and it's driven by capitalism, because obviously disposable vapes would be the capitalist dream, wouldn't they? That there's this thing that is made of plastic, and if they're probably made by children, they're probably made by like children in developing nations, and even though they may be better for our individual health, like they're still a complete fucking nightmare. I mean, anyway, sorry, I won't go into a rant about it, but yeah, it's capitalism. The convergence of capitalism in all of these things can't be disregarded.
And I mean, that kind of ties it all together. This idea of dopamine mining is perfectly matched to the onward march of capitalism. Like they feed into each other. So we consume and consume and consume to feel better or to disassociate. And there are people willing to sell us drugs, alcohol, porn, food, holidays, cheap holidays, whatever, latest trends. There's things like Temu selling us cheap clothes. There's exploitation. There's, race to the bottom with prices, and it's exploitation of humans. And it's all to make us feel like we can block out the tragedy and the despair of our very existence.
Yeah, the noise.
Yeah.
Well, on that note,
on that happy note,
on that cheerful note, I think we'll wrap up. I mean, there's lots more to say, but yeah, maybe we'll have to talk about it in a future episode. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to say? Where can we find you?
You can follow me at Fat Gay Vegan. You can look for my story about food addiction and medication. I think we're going to put the link below. You can follow me Instagram, and I also would finish by saying Free Palestine. And what about you? Where can people find you?
People can find me at Josh and the Jumpstarts, and you can follow us, subscribe to us here on YouTube, Spotify, or on Apple Podcasts. And if you could please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would help us, help the algorithms serve more extreme and explicit content to their users. But let's leave it there. Until next week, we'll be back in your feeds. And Bette Midler, I hope you're having a very happy 79th birthday wherever you are.
Okay, I was trying to think of something funny to say, like a Bette Midler quote, but
okay,
I can't think of any.
I could tell her. I'll tell you what. I'll tell a Sophie Tucker joke to.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't have time to explain it. So there's Sophie Tucker jokes, one of Bette Midler's famous ones. So she's got this one, and it goes, "I will never forget it. I was making love with my boyfriend Ernie the other night, and he said to me, 'Soph, you got no tits and a tight box.' And I said to him, 'Ernie, get off my back.'"
So terrible.
Bye, folks. We'll see you next week.
Bye.